What is up, folks? The number one Wednesday night Nintendo podcast is back in action. Obviously, we did a little battle of the sexes last week, and someone got a little too confident with doing better than our episode. So we are here to right the wrongs. We are here to steer the ship back in the proper direction of being the number one show on Wednesday nights. I am RGT85, joined as always by Nate the Hate. Yep,
Yes,
Nate
I'm,
here.
I'm I'm watching the Yankees and the Orioles, trying to see if the Yankees will secure the AL East, but they are not playing well tonight, so I am very flabbergasted at the moment and frustrated, and I have a feeling my frustrations will carry over into tomorrow when the New York Giants take on the Dallas Cowboys unless Neighbors shows up and just dominates.
Neighbors is all. That's all we got. Okay, that's all. The man is Jesus Christ. He's the rookie of the year, and of course we have Josie Woah. Josie, how we doing?
So good. I finally beat Donkey Kong Country 3. So I've beat the original trilogy now. Great.
We're all very proud of you.
Thank you.
Celia unfortunately has some family issues. Please keep her in your well wishes. She's got something going on. So she will not be joining us tonight. Before we get into everything, though, I want to give a huge thank you to Fransby for coming in, aka Todd Howard, gifting us 10 memberships. If you get a membership courtesy of Fransby, make sure you show some love in the comment section down below. We love Fransby around these parts. And of course, we have to talk about our Patreon members, as Patreon and memberships and all that good sort of stuff is what keeps this show afloat. We have Adam Baldizon, a billion cats who I've got beef with. Hashtag drunk on tacos, Trent A, the Game Orb, Mr. Joby, Joshua Butts, aka the Butts Man, and of course John O. You can get extra content by becoming a member, including tonight, because we will be live after this for a little while for a little Q&A hangout session. So make sure, if you're not a member yet, that you become a member. Be sure to share this podcast out with your friends. Be sure to share this stream out with your friends so that we beat the other podcast. Now, before we get into the main sort of topic of debate, we did get the Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom reviews drop today. And the score was, I think, where people kind of expected it to be. If you look at it comparative to other Zelda games, like, it is lower than Spirit Tracks, which I just find to be very funny. But obviously, the amount of media at the time of Spirit Tracks versus at the time of now, it's very different. So is anyone surprised with Echoes of Wisdom scores? I've actually seen Wood, who's dressed up as Zelda for some reason, streaming it today.
Lovely.
Yeah, so I watched some of that. But what do we think about the scores? Are they about where you expected them?
So the overall in Metacritic is like 86, right?
85, 86.
86.
Yeah.
Okay. I feel like that's exactly where I assume it would be. And this is like a weird Zelda title, right? This wasn't supposed to be like the next huge crazy thing. So having a bit of a more modest score, I think it's fine. And honestly, an 86 is pretty good. Like with the amount of media we have now, like you've been saying, I think it's insane to think that that's a bad score. Don't most PlayStation games and Xbox games score around there?
I mean, yeah, it's just dependent. It does. Fairbanks does bring up a good point here. It seems like the game can be easy or kind of hard depending on how you choose to play it. That was one thing I would have noticed, or that I did notice while Wood was playing it, was that there definitely was a level of, like, the player being able to cheese it a little bit. Now, that was kind of earlier in the game. I had jumped back into the stream later on, and allegedly he had like a little difficulty with a boss or something like that. So that kind of, the chat kind of changed their demeanor towards that. Nate,
That's
what?
kind of
Oh,
how.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. That's
No,
kind
no,
of how Tears of the Kingdom was, though, right? I mean, like you could cheese it really crazy with all the things you could build, right? So I'd assume they're about the same in that regard.
maybe somewhat. I think this is a little bit more, and I did notice one thing that was that was kind of like I didn't really care for it too much. But Nate, what are you thinking about those scores? 86.
I think it ended up settling right around the score range I was expecting because leading up to the release, there were a lot of questions about the game and especially the echo mechanics and how they could be exploited, how much freedom and creativity they would give the player. And in some of the, I'll call them more critical reviews, they were kind of down on the mechanic and they felt as though the game was very simplistic and the way that you could exploit things was somewhat limited, especially in terms of the boss battles or even the dungeons and exploration areas themselves, that the game very clearly has one direction it wants you to do. And while you do have these secondary complementary options to consider with the echoes, the game still tries to push you into the direction it wants you to do. And that was one of my concerns when we saw the trailers throughout the year was how much freedom am I going to have here? So I think the score does reflect exactly the quality of the game we are getting. It is a very ingenious type of approach to the Legend of Zelda franchise with these echo mechanics, but at the same time, it's not as deep as I think I personally was hoping the game would be. But overall, I think it's a game I'll pick up in a couple of months when things slow down a little bit. There's a lot of holiday games coming out still this year, and this just seems to be more of a light-hearted, fun adventure and not one I necessarily am too eager to dive into at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I kind of look at it like it's not supposed to be like the next big thing. Like when you look
Mhm.
at something like Breath of the Wild's lead up, Tears of the Kingdom's lead up, years, years you waited for that. And then with Echoes of Wisdom, it was like, here's the game out in 6 months. Okay. Like I think it's there to fill a role. It's there to be something for the tail end of a system's life cycle. And I think it'll be fine for what it is. I plan on picking it up tonight. I'm sure lazy ass Spawn Wave will do that. So I finally played Echo the Wisdom with an hour long. I don't know how you watch that because think about it from a content perspective. Okay, you're gonna ruin the first hour of the game by watching this jackass play it. So what's he gonna establish in the first hour? Nothing. Unless it's like on a technical level. So like Black Myth Wukong, I understand that at least made a little sense. I was like, okay, we hadn't seen
Yeah,
the
that
PS5
one.
version. That one
Yeah,
made
Black
sense.
Myth
Everything
Wukong I
else.
can understand because people were curious. Yeah, people were curious how Black Myth Wukong was performing on the PlayStation 5. To be able to see some of that direct footage and an individual playing it, you could walk away and say, okay, that runs terribly. But with Echoes of Wisdom, especially because the game's already out in New Zealand and Australia, Japan, and we've had the reviews come out, a lot of these questions have been directly addressed. There's footage out there, so if you want to see how it performs on the Switch, which isn't great, it has some significant frame drops. You already have all that covered. You don't need to watch an individual say, well, here's the first half hour. Watch me get lost and not know what I'm doing. There's
That's
no
like
real value in that.
when he did Outlaws. I'm like, what's the point? Like it's all story. It's setting up the game. You don't accomplish anything in the first hour of substance.
That's true.
Did you guys see that
Especially.
VGC gave the game a 60?
Hmm.
Who reviewed it?
I don't know, but they said despite some ambitious ideas beneath the surface, Echoes of Wisdom is a surprisingly uneven Zelda adventure. Few of its headline mechanics are utilized to their potential, which means that while enjoyable and charming, it ultimately feels less essential than other modern 2D entries.
Well, it's a 3 out of 5. So
Oh
that
yeah, they
translates.
do like a score. I forgot about
Ooh,
that.
Andy. Andy. I'm surprised OJ hasn't tried to crucify him. What do you mean? 3 out of 5. It's the first party Nintendo game. It's the best in the world. I mean that's fine. It's not gonna be for everyone.
It
No, but
seems
then
like it's falling in line where we typically did see portable Zeldas
yeah,
review going back through history when we did get just those dedicated portable Zelda games that were always lesser than the console counterparts. And this seems to be pretty much an accurate reflection of just a portable Zelda that wants to do some creative things, but it's not going to revolutionize the franchise. And it's just taking some of the mechanics of Tears of the Kingdom and simplifying them to just make I don't want to say simplistic, but more of a juvenile approach to Zelda puzzle. And as they said in the interview, this kind of started out as a Zelda dungeon maker, which you can very clearly see with the echo
Mhm.
mechanic. So, I mean, if you're looking for a lot of depth, that's just not going to be found here.
I mean,
Right.
I think we all know what the real problem was.
Let's start a woman.
No, it was produced by a woman. I mean, that's your death blow right there. Obviously, that's a joke. Actually, no,
Clip it. Put them on Twitter.
I'm gonna the fucking dignify anyone who thinks I'm being serious with that. I am serious. No, I'm just kidding.
Okay.
All right. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of,
I like how your mic cuts out every time you do that.
we do have some questions that John sent us a list of. I don't really know.
Oh yeah. Do you want me to read them to you and then you can respond?
Oh no, I got it up. I got it
Okay.
up. I don't know where these came from, but there are a couple that are.
They came from Patreon.
Okay, so they came from Patreon.
If you
So
guys want to ask questions like these guys did, subscribe to the Patreon. Go check it out.
I'll pick a couple of these here. I'll pick this one from Jeffrey Tucker because I feel like this is kind of something that we're talking about here. With frame rate issues plaguing The Legend of Zelda Echoes of Wisdom, why not have a locked 30 frames per second option? And that's an interesting question to ask because that is one thing that Nintendo does very poorly is giving you a mode that maybe focuses on graphics or a mode that focuses on performance. And I think that's something that they probably should have been doing that with the Switch for a long time, but I don't know.
I feel like there's not a lot of outcry of people wanting that, is there?
There is, but you get silenced.
Okay. So maybe it's just that they don't feel a need to because there's no pressure.
Because I complained about Link's Awakening HD having drops in it, and nitpick. It's not a nitpick. It's a literal issue that if it was on any, I mean, you can't sit there and clown PS5 Pro for 50 frames per second on Dragon's Dogma 2 and then not, keep that same sort of energy. Another question here that I see from Medallion, who may be in the chat. There he is right there, actually.
Whoa.
Toxic Positivity. He knows the deal. Game & Talk has fast become my favorite podcast. I sub and support on Patreon because of the people and the community, and it's not a super long podcast. Too many podcasts these days are so long. Where do you see the future of this podcast in another year or two? Honestly, we started this at the absolute worst time.
Yeah,
Because
literally.
this is like the worst of Nintendo. So I think sky's the limit, I think it could end up becoming something to the point of where, it sustains itself enough to be done weekly. Obviously that's contingent on support and of course having topics, having stuff actually worthwhile talking about. But with the new system, like it opens up so many doors because you have the system itself, you have accessories for the system, you have games for the system, you have comparisons of this game running on this platform versus that platform. So I think the future looks good.
Yeah, I think it's real promising because especially if we were able to do this well with very little new news and very little, in the way of Nintendo stuff, like RGT's been saying, it'll just go up from here, ideally.
And the final question I will pick here, Justin Barta. What do you all think is next for the Kirby series? I personally prefer the 2D games, but Forgotten Land was the best selling in the franchise. I think Kirby takes a little break. Kirby got worked over on the Switch. Like there are so many Kirby games on there. I think it's time for Kirby to chill for a little while. And then maybe you come out with I don't know, maybe a 2.5D thing, or maybe a hybrid of 2D and 3D stuff. Like it depends on what size and scope you want, because obviously with Forgotten Land being such a sales success, I mean, that probably opened up Nintendo's eyes a little bit to seeing, hey, we maybe could do a little bit more with this franchise than just putting him in mini games and digital only games and stuff like that. Like maybe there is some more substance to Kirby, untapped potential, because really, I would say one of the best was like Planet Robobot.
Mm-hmm.
But I still feel like
Well,
Kirby
the
is always
3DS was real overworked though.
right. You're 100% right on that. I just feel like there is some untapped potential within Kirby. And some of it, even I would like to see it go back to its roots a little bit in terms of challenge, because Kirby's Adventure was not like a super easy game. Like there was a good bit of challenge to it. So maybe you do something where like, I don't know. It's tough to say because, a lot of games this cycle seem to be limiting the amount of challenge you get from first party stuff. But I don't know. What do you think?
I think that it makes sense for them to almost keep maybe not as like many spin-offs and weird stuff that they did with the Switch, but like maybe a 2D Kirby and a 3D Kirby each system,
What
but
about
like very
what about a
spaced out.
4D Kirby?
Wow.
Enter the fourth dimension.
VR Kirby.
Ah,
Amazing.
ah.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like Kirby's adaptable. You can put Kirby in anything, and I think that's why they whore him out so much.
Our little
So like,
favorite prostitute. Liza Phil Spencer with a $2 dono. Nate, where's FE4, Pragmata, and Ace Attorney 7? I think Pragmata is PlayStation 6 at this point.
Yeah, I mean, Pragmata is still in development. I think it's just faced a lot of development troubles. Ace Attorney 7, didn't we get an update on that not too long ago? Wasn't it in the Partner Direct? Or am I misremembering? Or was it a different Ace Attorney game?
No, that was the Apollo. Wasn't it the Apollo games?
I don't
Getting
recall.
that's a franchise. They're just like, hey, remember these games? No, it was there was something like only released in Japan or something like that. Now it's coming
Okay.
stateside. Like it's not a new one per se.
Okay. Well, I mean, we have Tokyo Game Show this week, so Pragmata and Ace Attorney 7, maybe we get updates on them there. As for Fire Emblem 4, Genealogy of the Holy War, I haven't heard anything new about it in over a year, so ideally Nintendo does give an update on it sometime soon and can slap a release date on it and finally release it stateside for the very first time.
Now, I saw your reaction to this, Josie. So because you reacted that way, I'm going to need you to read this extremely generous $100 Canadian super chat from
I
Corey.
reacted that way because it was such a massive super chat.
But I feel like because of the reaction, you have to be the one to read this out. I mean,
Corey with $100 Canadian says Kirby the Throat Goat.
Corey is, of course, a legend around these parts. I saw Corey earlier on my book signing stream, which was very unhinged. The stuff that I put in some of these books. And I also learned, I thought this was all of them. No, this was 60 of them. So I still have a lot more books showing up to my house. Thank you so much, Corey. Legend around these parts. Do a little hashtag Corey in the comment section down below, or actually in the live chat, I guess you would say. All right. So now I guess we got to get into the meat and potatoes. Because it's been a bit of a busy week for Nintendo Switch 2 leaks. Quote unquote leaks, I should say, because a lot of this stuff hasn't been confirmed. Now, I'm not even sure where to start with this, but we're going to go in a different direction than your average podcast where you've got a bunch of people just sitting around kind of guessing and theorizing. I like to get to the bottom of things. I like to figure things out at the root. So I'm going to propose that we basically try and come to conclusions on things based on what someone on this podcast may or may not know. So Nate.
Yeah, Josie.
Yeah, Josie.
It's called the Nintendo Snap. I'm putting it out there. That's how you, because have you seen that new animation for the Joy-Con or whatever that was floating around there? Instead of the Switch sound effect where it like slides in, it like snaps to the side and magnets itself in.
That would be a horrible idea. That's Wii U all over again.
I mean, yeah.
Nate, I want to start out with the image that is being used for the thumbnail of this video, and just that. So that was floating around. This is a real Nintendo Switch 2. Our first look at the system. I am of the mindset that this is a prototype from an unknown time frame, and I'm not even sure if this is like an actual thing to even really care that much about this image. Now, what do you know potentially, or what can you say potentially about this image that has been floating out there? I'm talking about the actual picture, not the computer renders that everyone was jizzing their pants about.
Based on conversations I've had, my understanding is that the image appears to be legitimate, but as you said, it is a prototype kit. The whispered date going around is sometime in late 2023, given maybe around October to November of 2023. And it's a prototype kit, which means everything that you're seeing here is not going to be representative in the final unit. This is something that was passed around, that some partners were able to work with. They got a general feel. It doesn't mean the exact size. It's representative of what the retail final kit will be. Things change. There have been a few revisions since this dev kit or prototype kit was distributed to partners. So really, there's not that much to take away from it. I know a lot of people have been talking about the top USB, saying, what could it be used for? That may strictly be used for development purposes. It may not be in the retail kit. And that's something that people do have to keep in mind. Ultimately, the only thing you can really take away from it is it looks like it's a bigger Switch. And even the conversations I've had, it was very take it with a grain of salt type of conversations where the individuals may have seen this kit and they were just like, yeah, it looks like a Switch. Which isn't all that shocking. We're getting a successor to the Switch, so Nintendo's not going to go with a radically different approach to the overall design. But whether or not this will be what we get in hand when the Switch 2 is released, it's hard to say. I wouldn't be shocked. But based on that image, and given that it is now nearing a year old, all you could really take away from it is, yeah, it's an iterative successor to the Switch. And we have a general idea of how it may look, which I don't think anyone was expecting something drastically different from the current Switch. Maybe people thought it would be a little bit thicker, maybe something along the lines of a ROG Ally or a Steam Deck in terms of thickness, and this shows something that is quite a bit thinner. But at the end of the day, it is a prototype, and prototypes are not representative of final builds.
Josie, what are your thoughts on the thickness? Is it a good thickness? A little too thin? What kind of feelings does this image invoke for you?
I feel like if it's too hefty, like it'd be a pain in the ass to lug around, right? So like, I don't want that. So I'd like, a chill Switch. And I know you have this weird double meaning thing, but I'm not. I'm just saying directly about this that I
don't know what you're alluding to here, man. Get your mind out of the gutter. I think the gray colors and like, I don't know, that's what kind of sits wrong with me on a lot of it, of people.
Well, but there was a gray Switch.
Yeah, but that was the first model. That's the one they want to ban. I mean, ever since then, it's been here's red and blue Joy-Cons, here's white Joy-Cons.
Yeah, but this is just a prototype.
This is a prototype, and the Switch dev kits had black Joy-Cons. So this is kind of in line, or it's like a dark gray Joy-Con, kind of a stone gray. So this would fall in line with that, but it's a year old. There's not that much we can take away from it beyond maybe some general dimensions and saying, okay, will these dimensions end up aligning with the final kit, or is this just giving a very arbitrary blueprint of what will be? Because as I said, this has gone through several revisions since late last year. So what developers and partners have in hand today may be radically different than what those images suggest.
And if this is a prototype, or especially if it's a dev kit, show me a dev kit that looks exactly like the final product. Like, I don't know what the original Switch dev kit looked like, so that could be a problem for my analogy here. But most of the time, a dev kit isn't indicative of what you're going to get into your hands. Plus, you know, the USB at the top thing, that was definitely a big point of conversation for a lot of people. And it's just kind of like you said, like there's a whole lot that could be for, bug testing and stuff, like connecting it to a computer to do something like that. Nothing that would actually be in the retail version of the system that you would be getting into your hands. What about
Right.
the Joy-Cons? There was an image floating around of Joy-Cons, allegedly that was a leak or something like that. Upon first inspection, um, I didn't really notice anything like super crazy, but maybe I'm just an idiot and I missed it.
I think
Um,
they had like an extra button or something, but other than that, they looked pretty much the same. I don't remember where that button was though. It was like under the
Yeah, it
normal.
was on the reverse side. It was on the
Yeah.
back, kind of below what would be the LR or the what is it, like the RZ LZ button on a
Mhm.
current Joy-Con.
so what would be the function of that?
Just
I mean,
share something.
that could be the detached button, similar to
Mm.
what we have now, and they just made it bigger on the prototype kit just to be for, representation. Especially
Mhm.
if it is a magnet, you probably need some sort of, mechanism to deactivate
Yeah,
the
like
hold.
hooker. Mhm.
It could also be an actual button for functionality, but just based on the images alone, we really can't come to any concrete conclusion because we don't see this in use. All we see is a static image. And again, if this is a prototype kit of even just a prototype model of what maybe Nintendo is envisioning for the system, there can be tweaks, there can be changes. So it's hard to say if is that just a mechanism to release the Joy-Con? Is it going to be something we will be using in games? It's hard to say at this point based solely on the pictures.
So what we have here is a detachable Joy-Con. Dun, 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 dun. What about this thing here with the teeth? What do we think about this?
I'd imagine that's where it'd snap in, right?
But no teeth on the other side.
Hmm. But maybe we just can't see it because it's at a different angle.
Maybe. Those are some big teeth though.
Sure.
I just feel like this is like way too similar. And I mean, maybe that's the move, but like there's your share button right there.
Right.
Like,
Are those don't look like rails though, right? Those look like something that fits into it.
yes.
Yeah. So they're going with a new thing for that.
Obviously there's a lot of stuff to take away from this. And then of course, arguably the biggest part of it um would be the alleged specs. Um and
Right.
we could sit there and say numbers and crap like that, but numbers to me don't mean anything. It's what you do with it. Um it's empty inside, bro. That's only the shell. Okay. All right. I understand, like, yeah, there's hold on. Like there's clearly no buttons here. See? No buttons. It's hollow. That slot is for commune notation and charging. All right. That's a nice slot there. A slot that I would like to explore. But we did get some specs, and I could sit here and read you the numbers, but I think the homie Kami did a very nice write-up of this, putting it into real-world perspective. So we will be taking a look at that now. So alleged specs, handheld mode, right above PS4 before DLSS. Docked mode between PS4 Pro and Xbox Series S before DLSS with more modern hardware than the former. RAM slower than PS5 and Xbox Series X/S in the speed department, but more capacity than the Xbox Series S. Should have about 10.5 to 11 gigs of RAM available to games, going by the Switch One's RAM allotment for its OS. We have storage here. Well, look at this fucking asshole. Nate Drake heard about the compression techniques and fast load times of the Breath of the Wild tech demo, respectively, for each source. And then we have ARM base instead of x86. It's also NVIDIA versus AMD. There's plenty of factors at play. It's not apples to apples comparison. Plus, the native tensor cores of the Switch 2 will allow for DLSS, letting the system punch above its weight. So we could go by this one by one, or we can go by this as look at this shitty podcast. Don't listen to that one. Handheld right above PS4 before DLSS.
Makes sense.
Like I'm fine with that.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't need to be that crazy. What's Nintendo doing on this thing? Nothing. As long as it can sort of keep up with third parties and whatever, and they can make a worse version port and it could look a little better.
I mean, I don't even it depends on DLSS because
right, because it can look better, right? So they can just
if we take a look here. Hold on. We're getting fucking fancy tonight.
Yeah, we are getting fancy tonight.
I don't. Okay.
Huge.
So here's a little DLSS. So you can see here, like, what we're doing. Ray tracing, quality mode, enhanced visuals, enhanced resolution. We eventually get to enhanced frame rates as well, which is actually covered up by our Game & Talk logo. But you can see, like, this is enhanced. Like, look at that bike and stuff like that. Yes, we're talking about PS4 Pro or PS5 Pro levels of enhancement. But if I don't have to buy another system to get that, it comes natively in the system that I have, that is a win. That is a see. Look, we're getting 120 frames there. It does sound very Billy Idolish. Okay, now go away. The video file is done. Oops. All right. So that's something that I think a lot of people don't understand with DLSS is what it actually does and can do, because of the fact that it is a very powerful thing. Now, I guess before we go too far into things, Nate, what are you hearing about these alleged specs? Is everything lining up to what you believe it to be? Is this just more so based on people's hopes and dreams and wishes for it?
I mean, a lot of these specs have been publicly rumored based on shipping log leaks and a leak from NVIDIA during the hack about T239 itself. So these specs aren't new. They just re-entered the news sphere this last week or so because you did have the prototype shell leak and such, so people just naturally started to latch on to some of these public rumors again, and they began to repeat them. But generally speaking, they're in line with what the publicly rumored specs are to be. PS4 level performance before DLSS and such, but with more modern architecture, where it should be very competitive with any current handheld portable PC, be it a Steam Deck or a ROG Ally, but also be very formidable while in dock mode and be able to take advantage of DLSS to basically punch above its weight. It's not going to replicate PS5 or Xbox Series X level visuals, even with DLSS. That's just not going to be possible. At the end of the day, it is going to be inferior to those machines, but it should be more than capable of getting, third-party ports and such. They may underperform in comparison to even the Xbox Series S in terms of textures and such. But with DLSS, maybe you have better image quality. So it's going to be very interesting to see those comparisons when they come out once the system is introduced, to see which system really has that advantage and how defined the advantage is and how the consumers will react to it. But based on the rumored specs, there's nothing all that surprising there. I think that is in line with what most people were expecting. I don't think anyone was expecting the Switch 2 to only be a PlayStation 4 while docked, because if that were the case, I think Nintendo would be in a lot of trouble going into this new generation, because the gap between a base PS4 and a PS5 is significant, and we have seen some cross-gen ports perform exceptionally poor on PlayStation 4, and we can look to a release just this past week with the Star Wars Jedi game, where it's rough on Xbox One and PlayStation 4 in comparison to their big brother. But yeah, generally speaking, I think the specs are in line with what individuals can anticipate. As to what we will get in terms of real world performance, that remains to be seen. The system has to be introduced. We have to see games running on the hardware. All we have to operate on right now are the reports from last summer when Nintendo did have some tech demos at Gamescom, and included in those tech demos was Breath of the Wild, where they basically showcased near instantaneous load time, and there were also the reports about the Matrix Awakening demo running on the dev kit, or I shouldn't say dev kit, I should say targeted spec hardware, which typically refers to a PC with specs that come as close to what the Switch 2 would be as possible. So it's definitely going to be a capable machine. It's just not going to be at the level of what we have from Sony and Microsoft currently.
I want to push back on that just a smidge, but first we have a couple donations. Vampire Slayer 83 with a big $20 dono. Shout out to Vampire Slayer. Sorry to hear about Celia. Great to see all you guys tonight. Guilty Gear Strive just got announced for Switch in January. I want a Lambo in my Switch too. All right. I did see Guilty Gear. I believe they are positioning that at a $60 price point, so I'm interested to see how that sells. Barrios, he's trying to get me here. Louis Barrios. Hey guys, when are you gonna invite to your pod Anita Cox? I have
Got him.
I have the Moe's Tavern phone. Okay, so I have all of these ready to go. I need a bath. Homer sexual. Come on. Vampire Slayer 83 with another $20 dono. DLSS does work wonders. The Guardian of the Galaxy game uses it and it works really well. If the new Switch uses it for every game, I'm down. So thank you for the donations. I do want to push back a little bit, because you said that, it's not going to be as good as PS5 or Xbox Series X. Are those systems really that impressive? Like you said, the Star Wars Jedi game. To me, that's just a bad port. Because if I look at something like Horizon Zero Dawn, if I look at something like Gran Turismo 7, God of War Ragnarok, there's really not that. I guess if you get into the nitty-gritty of things, particle effects, ray tracing and crap like that, then okay, sure. But if you're the Matrix demo, I'm sorry. The Matrix demo is the best looking thing that we've had this generation. Now, granted, it's very curated. Granted, it's not very long. But that's the most technically impressive thing that I've seen this generation by far. And if you're able to get that, like, yeah, you might not get the ray tracing effects of the PS5 Pro and stuff like that, but even the PS5 Pro isn't hitting certain
Well,
metrics that a lot of people expect it to be.
I mean, that's where these comparisons, when the Switch 2 is introduced, will get interesting because on paper, the Switch 2 should match or outperform an Xbox Series and PlayStation 5 in terms of ray tracing capabilities. It's going to come down to whether or not developers take full advantage of the ray tracing capabilities that Nvidia has employed onto this particular SoC. But a lot of the games this generation, we also have to factor in that they have been cross-generational games, where some of the PS5 or Xbox Series versions of these games are just kind of super enhanced Xbox One and PlayStation 4 games. When you look at games that are exclusive to those platforms, they tend to be more impressive than what you would be getting from those cross-generation games that you reference, like God of War Ragnarok or Gran Turismo 7. The problem is that it's just a handful of games that we can really reference to this point. But it's going to be, it's going to really be determined on the game. So let's use Dragon's Dogma 2 just as a very loose example. If it were to come to Switch 2, the texture work of the environments or some of the clothing on the characters may be less detailed than what we see on a PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series. Not something you would immediately notice unless you had a side-by-side comparison. But that's where DLSS can be factored in, that the image quality on the Switch 2 could potentially be better than what you're getting from those other systems. It's really just going to come down to texture work or texture quality, image clarity, and general performance. So are we going to get 30 FPS versions of 60 FPS games on the Switch 2 in comparison to PS5? Is it going to basically be a repeat of what we got with Switch games when they got PS4 and Xbox One downports, where you did see a compromised version of frame performance and you also saw lesser texture quality? It could be a replicated situation of that, but DLSS is going to help cover up some of those flaws that were very apparent on the Switch when you were looking at comparisons versus the Xbox One and PlayStation 4. But it's going to come down to the developer as well, whether or not they have the budget to do a quality port. What game are we talking here? What engine is it using? Is the engine in question going to be scalable to the Switch 2's SDK? There's a lot of unknowns right now, but on paper, the Switch 2 should be quite competitive with the systems, at least in a similar way as the Switch was competitive with the PS4 and Xbox One. But it should have that leverage of DLSS to make it look more competitive and more impressive than the Switch was in comparison to the PS4 and Xbox One.
So I have up on the screen a comparison of my favorite game, Death Stranding, with DLSS off and DLSS on, running on a RTX 2060. Now, just for the sake of this conversation, based on the information that you've gathered, how does the Switch 2, and this doesn't have to be a long-winded answer unless it needs to be, but how would you compare the Switch 2's alleged specs to something like a 2060?
I mean, that's above my pay grade,
Okay,
unfortunately.
that's fine. But you could see here the DLSS, what it's actually doing. The frame rate on the left-hand side with an off is 30. Unfortunately, it's covered up right here with our branding, but it says 60
I
on
can
the other
take it off.
side. And okay, so you can see that it has 60 there, and you can see like the texture difference. Like this is
Mhm.
big. This is large. This is making a much clearer and sharper image with DLSS. And since DLSS is, of course, an NVIDIA property, and Nintendo is the only company that utilizes. And yes, Jay Arthur is right. This is DLSS 2.0. Now, we don't know which area. I don't know that we have a concrete. I mean, obviously, we don't have a concrete thing, but this would be older DLSS technology. And
Yes.
look at what this is doing. It's doubling the frame rate and arguably doubling the texture quality on the same exact hardware. And that's something that I think people need to realize with this is that this could potentially be a large game changer. Now, yes, from a native standpoint, you're not going to get the same visual fidelity, and you probably won't even necessarily get exact. Like, let's say Final Fantasy 16 comes to the Switch. It's probably not going to look as good as the PC version in all areas, but you're going to get it. I don't even necessarily think it needs to, because you're dealing with a hybrid system. I think as long as you are not having the gaps that we saw in some third-party games, especially more modern ones, just for instance, WWE 2K18. Like, if you're not getting that, if you're getting something more in line with what's available on the consoles now, like, I'm sorry, but we're at the era of diminishing returns with this stuff. You got to fucking take out a microscope or a magnifying glass to see some of these upgrades with the PS5 Pro. And like, some people are buying into it, some people aren't. Most people, I feel like, aren't.
That's going to be the big thing with the Switch 2, is that where it may be inferior in some ways, and in other ways it can be superior. And I think the best generation, just for a loose example, that you and I would immediately have a good point of reference to, is the PS2, GameCube, Xbox generation. In every way, on paper, the PlayStation 2 and Xbox was far more powerful than the GameCube. But the GameCube was far more efficient, so it outperformed the PlayStation 2 in several areas. It also outperformed the Xbox in several areas. But then the Xbox was able to outperform the GameCube, and the PS2 was able to outperform the GameCube in certain regions as well. So we're maybe seeing kind of a resurrection of that generation of the Switch 2 can be superior to those two systems in select parts, but it's going to be inferior in others. It's just going to be a question of where is it going to be superior, and I think ray tracing will be that area that it is going to be superior in comparison to the base PS5 and the Xbox Series X and S. But in terms of just overall performance, those two systems will still handedly outperform what the Switch 2 is capable of, but the Switch 2 will be able to stand there, be competitive, and ideally get enough quality third-party ports that the consumer can make a well-advised purchase and be satisfied with the amount of games coming to the platform. It doesn't mean every third-party game that is on the Series X and PS5 is going to get a Switch 2 port. They may be select games that are just going to be impossible, depending, again, on the engine, the developer, the budget, whether or not they can outsource it to a quality external studio to handle the port job. There's a lot of things to consider, but the Switch 2 is going to be far more competitive than what the Switch was to the PS4 and Xbox One in terms of overall fidelity and performance.
We got Corey McIntyre with another 20 Canadian saying, like, the Doom Eternal port. Yeah, that was, it was still fun. I actually played it and I had fun with it, but it did leave a bit to be desired. Josie, how important is all this stuff to you?
Not super. I mean, I feel like this is about the best we're gonna get with battery life that is sustainable. So if they throw a PS5 level shit in there, that thing's gonna last for just like an hour. So I think they did the smartest decision they could have done, and I think, like, as long as it allows games that, like, are going to be ported to look sort of comparable to the other one, and they can run, at a playable rate, like, that's fine. I don't think it needs to be this powerhouse of a console. Nintendo's hasn't played that game for a long time, and they have found a lot of success still. So, I don't know. The next Zelda game is amazingly beautiful, and there's crazy DLSS that makes it run in 120 frames a second. That'd be great. If not, I don't really care because it's still going to be there, and I'd probably still play it. So,
right. And I mean, you do have to balance things like efficiency with this, because unlike those other systems, this is of a hybrid nature. I want to thank you guys. We are at over 400 viewers right now.
huge.
Once again, back on top of the Wednesday night time slot. Thank you to you guys for getting us back there. So I guess, now with all these alleged specs, all these alleged leaks, all this sort of stuff, I guess there's really one question left as far as, it really boils down to is when the hell do we finally see this thing? Is it October? Is it 2024? Like, if it's not October, I feel like 2024 is off the table. Like, you're not going to do it around November or December. That doesn't make any sense to me. So I feel like it's either, October or never. Josie, what do you think? You think October, or
Yeah.
you think? Okay,
I think it has to
very
be.
quick, very quick with that.
Well, it has to be. I agree. I think like it doesn't make sense to release it or announce it like so soon to hopefully the release date of 2025. So I'm really, really hoping it happens in October because otherwise we're just going to continue to get the console leaked and leaked and leaked and not see anything official from Nintendo. And then, that eventual like reveal is going to be spoiled a little bit. So I hope they do it sooner rather than later.
Let's be real. The worst part of it not being announced in October would be you'd have to have these fucking people every week.
Where's the Switch 2? The Switch 2 is coming this week. Where's it at?
This week? This is the league coming. Yeah, Nintendo's yeah. Nate, where are you? Where are you sitting on this line of 2024 or 2025?
I mean, ideally, we do see it sooner because the sooner we see it means the release date will follow soon after. So the longer we wait, the longer it will eventually come to market. But I mean, I would have hope for October if it is to be announced this year and release early next year. But sometimes when you look at Nintendo's history of them giving us a deadline or a self-imposed deadline of when they are going to communicate plans, they do tend to go towards the tail end of that deadline. And I hope that isn't the case here because that would suggest maybe a 2025 reveal. And if that is the case, it means we're not getting the system until summer or second half of 2025 if they do wait until, let's say, February or March of next year to reveal it. But I hope for October. And, if we don't see it by the conclusion of October, I think right now, as I sit, I would be in agreement with you. I don't think they would announce it in November or December unless Jeff Keighley has played some masterful hand and secured the announcement in December at the Game Awards.
No fucking way.
Yeah, no way.
I mean, it would be very surprising. So I hope for this month. And, I guess we will stay tuned to Nintendo's Twitter account to see if they ever put out a tweet sometime in the month of October to say, hey, we have news for you soon. I mean, we do have to keep in mind Nintendo does have an investors meeting on November 5th. So they have to, at least in the back of their minds, be prepared for questions about when is the system coming out? When will they officially reveal it? So it would give, stand to reason that they would announce it prior to November 5th. Doesn't mean it wouldn't be November 4th. It also doesn't mean it wouldn't be the morning of November 5th either. But you have to figure that they are prepared that they would get some investor questions in relation to the hardware. So, I mean, I think right now, if you had to flip a coin based on that timing, it would suggest something prior to November 5th. But at the same time, I think I'd give November 5th as the deadline. If that meeting comes and goes and Nintendo once again just does a stump speech and says, we will announce it before the conclusion of our fiscal year, then we have our answer that they're probably waiting until late February or early March to reveal the system.
We have nothing to show yet. Please be patient. Josie's putting up a poll right now for Team 2024 or Team 2025. I'm hopeful for 2024. I think it does make sense. You can,
because how are they going to pad the rest of the Switch? Like, I don't know
it's the biggest game of all time is coming out in January for the Switch.
Donkey Kong Country Returns?
Of course. Everyone's excited for that game.
I am low-key excited.
Of course. I will show you how to set up a goddamn emulator and where to get the game, how to play the game. Do not support that nonsense. That disgustingness. Because really, Like, I'll be honest with you. I'm not interested in Super Mario Party Country Bear Jamboree. I'm not interested in Mario and Luigi Brothership, whichever it is. I always forget. And that's a shame because I liked those games a lot when they were handheld games. But I'm sorry, that art style just looks poo-poo to me. It looks like watercolors that are like super, like it looks blurry, and I don't understand why. So like I need something. I need something because this year 2024 has sucked for video games, and anyone who dares to put out, was this one of the best years of gaming, you should ostracize and tar and feather them, because that's disgusting. It's disgusting to even think that. It just shows you that you are ridiculous. We'll say calendar year. Dennis Batista, $5 donations. Greetings from Panama. How do you feel about backwards compatibility for physical and digital games on the Switch 2? RGT, Giants or Cowboys on Thursday? I want the Giants to win, but I don't expect them to. So if they do win, I'm just pleasantly surprised because it just shows how bad the Cowboys are. Backwards compatibility for physical and digital games on the Switch 2.
I think so. I think the eShop is going to carry over, and I think you're going to be able to play your cartridges in the same slot. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different, but I'm assuming it's going to be like going from the DS to 3DS.
Nate?
I mean, I feel like I answer this every other week.
Hey,
It has backwards compatibility.
there you go. You heard it here first. Go ahead and run and clip that. Get us some
Yeah, please tag Game and Talk and make sure you shout out our YouTube and tell people to go subscribe.
I will say, Medallion says the eShop sucks. It does suck. It needs a complete overhaul. But I think your purchases from the eShop will,
accounts.
Your
I mean, your
will
accounts
transfer
carried.
and-
Yeah, we had the graph that your accounts would carry over, but it was that was also kind of like, well, okay, my account is carrying over, but my account isn't necessarily meaning the things I bought. That just means my Nintendo Switch. I guess that's an interesting thing. Are we gonna see a new fucking system for NSO?
You know what's curious about that? That myself, MVG, and Celia talked about that very topic last week on Nate the Hate, where we also had other developers chime in for what they want from a eShop on Switch 2, and they also highlight the problems with the current eShop. The episode is currently available on Nate the Hate.
I heard
Now-
there wasn't very much new information about the Switch 2.
Yeah,
Heard
that's
it
what I
was
Well,
kinda
because it
useless.
wasn't about the Switch 2, it was about the Switch 2 eShop and the wants of developers. So I mean, if you're going in for that type of substance, thinking we were going to leak something about the Switch 2, it just sounds as though that is the fault of the individual looking for something that is not there.
Bars.
I don't know. I heard it was a fluff piece like that McMahon documentary.
Sometimes there's nothing better than a fluffernutter.
I see. I don't like fluff. I don't like it. I remember my stepdad once came to my kindergarten and he was giving us sandwiches, peanut butter and jelly, or peanut butter and jelly, or peanut butter and fluff. And I was just like, peanut butter. He was like, don't you want to try the fluff? They gave them to all the kids too. I don't know what the fuck it was. It was some weird thing. And I was
Isn't it like
no.
marshmallow fluff? People do that all the time.
Yeah, I don't, because you know why? Because the word fluff makes me think of a fart.
Ew.
What if
And
they just
like-
called it marshmallow cream?
No, just give me. Do you know? I've never had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. I've only had a peanut butter. I think jelly is fucking weird. It's weird. It's got a weird consistency to it. I'm not a huge fan of the color. Just give me straight up peanut
You were
butter.
such a weird kid, I can tell.
What do you
Just give me
mean that the fan
Everybody
of
was
the color? It's
scared of
different
you.
color based on the jam. If you have
Yeah.
grape jam, apple
Yeah, but
jam,
I mean, most of
apricot.
it's grape. Most of it's grape. But like, nah, bro. I don't want that shit. It's weird to me. Just
You're a
a
weird
straight
guy.
up peanut butter, chunky or smooth. I don't mind chunky. I think chunky can be pretty decent sometimes. But I don't want that the jelly, man. Get away from me. I ain't putting that jelly. I ain't.
What about like
spreading it.
Nutella?
No,
Like
what-
peanut butter
no,
Nutella?
no.
Oh, that's disgusting.
That's a thing.
Vampire Slayer 83 with a $20 donut. We really shouldn't be talking about fluff pieces. Somebody will clip it and put it on the hub. Sean and his weird fetishes. Hey, if that's what someone wants to do, As long as they tag the show. I mean, they'll have to take a clip of it, and that's fine. All right, so I think we covered all the bases here of the Nintendo Switch, and we beat the other show, and that's really
What about the leak this week?
about
What about the
SDK?
FCC? I mean, the other show was talking about it earlier. They even brought up the file to, I don't know what the hell.
Okay, what is it? Because I didn't even pay it much mind. And for you to bring it up, there's got to be some sort of snarky answer attached to it.
There's a lot of people speculating over what it could be. You have individuals saying maybe it's the camera attachment for the Switch 2 that a Chinese YouTuber suggested. I believe that's what John had in his Spawn newscast earlier this week. Countless channels have wondered what it is. All we have is a very primitive outline of the shape, a product.
That was that woman who 3D printed it?
Yes.
Okay.
You have the product code, which is like CLO, and then a bunch of numbers. And, speculation's going wild. So I want to hear the speculation from you two. What do you think it is? You think it is a camera attachment, a screen attachment? Do you think it has any relation to the Switch 2, something completely different? I want to hear your thoughts.
Vitality sensor.
Or the Switch?
What's a vitality sensor?
Oh, ye of young age. They were gonna make something for the Wii that you would put your finger in, like a pulse, like a that reads your pulse.
Okay.
It was the stupidest fucking idea in the world.
Okay, so that's what you think this is?
That's what I think it is.
Okay.
I don't know. Who knows? Probably, if anything, it's nothing. Maybe something for AR or something.
Yeah, I'd imagine it's for some of their gimmicky stuff. Like the Joy-Con had a camera on it. Maybe they're doing Labo too, but now you can attach shit to the front. I don't know. A camera. I'll go with a camera.
Why? What do you think it is, Nate?
I think it is something that has nothing to do with the Switch or the Switch 2. I think it's a quality of life product. It's likely something that probably just monitors while you sleep.
And like Pokemon sleep? Is it Mario sleep?
Yeah, it's something along those lines. Probably gamified a little bit. And I mean, I think it's just going to be something like that. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's revealed. I mean, I'd say definitely revealed this year. They have their short-term confidentiality clause expire in March of next year. And typically when Nintendo gives it 180 days, they do reveal it ahead of that date. So I think it's something that they release in time for the holiday.
That would be cool. They should release a horror game, and if your heart rate goes too high, it just like...
Yeah, that's what they were going to do. That was kind of the mindset of it, but they never did anything with it, really. So
that would be kind of cool.
Yeah, I don't even expect it's game related though. I think it's purely something you put on your nightstand and it watches you, and then you wake up in the morning. It's like, you collected 5 coins by sleeping soundly tonight. Congratulations. You can say, what the fuck did I buy?
Yeah, that's kind of terrifying, bro. I'm not even gonna lie.
Yeah, it feels a little weird.
I mean, how's Pokemon Sleep operate?
I don't know.
Don't you you have to put your phone on your bed?
What?
So it can
yeah, that's how a lot of those sleep apps work.
Yeah, but that's the opposite of what you're supposed to do with your phone. It'll overheat sometimes, and then have you seen the pictures of the phones and their batteries are exploded?
You think Nintendo knows what the fuck they're doing? Come on. Come on now.
Valid.
All right, so we're gonna wrap this. Did you have something to say?
I was gonna say, should we go to the after show?
I was getting there. So we're gonna wrap this up. On that list, we only had to answer a couple.
Okay.
Before we wrap things up, huge shout outs to everyone who came through Vampire Slayer with multiple donations. Lies of Phil Spencer, of course, Corey McIntyre, Luis Barrios, Dennis Batista, and Fransby for gifting you 10 memberships. Now, if you got one of those memberships, you now have access to the after show of this, which will be starting in about 5 to 10 minutes. So make sure you guys come over there. Look for the post over on the community page, or if you are a Patreon member, you will have it accessible through the Patreon. Big thank you to our Patreon members: Adam Baldizon, A Billion Cats, Still got beef with them. A, Drunk on Tacos, Trent A, The Game Orb, Mr. Joby, Joshua Butts, a.k.a. The Butts Man, and of course, John O, who has been there for a very long time. And a little mention to our newest Patreon members, Dion Palicious, Dejan Vuzmek, Nicholas Montoya, and Evil Hotice. We will see you over on the after show. Thank you guys for making this successful. And the Casual Noob Gamer, Nintendo will name the next system Nintendo Attach because the Joy-Cons will attach with magnets, which will explain the gimmick and differentiate it from the original. I think Mike Odyssey said that. Didn't he say something like that? I'm pretty sure he said something like that.
I think
Thank
so.
you. Thank you, Casual Noob Gamer, for that donation. We will see you on the after show. Come check us out over there. And
If you got a membership, it'll be on the community tab. Go over there, click that link.
All right. See you next time.